both in Pakistan and actually in the rest of the world. So let me start by breaking down what I mean by learning and starting with non-examples of what is not what is not learning, at least not in the way that I'm conceiving it. Not a focus on teaching only, because if we focus on teaching, it means we're paying attention to ourselves as faculty members and not to the learners. Not only about the transmission of content, because content is information, it's not learning. Not about providing fragmented skills of isolated sets of skills and knowledge that somehow don't connect and don't really allow any student or employee or whoever is going through the training to have a more competent performance. It's not only about preparing learners to get a job, although yes, we want them to be educated so that they can be productive members of their communities and societies and their country. But that's not the only expectation. It's broader than that. And it's not about being narrow in their discipline, only being concerned about the things that they know about in their own disciplines. What are good examples of what I mean by learning is that we focus precisely on the learner and what they're supposed to acquire. What are the capabilities they need to develop? How they can become a more problem solvers and developing a mindset. They don't need to have answers or solutions for everything, but certainly be able to address problems with this anticipation of figuring things out, studying, understanding, asking questions, preparing learners to leave a footprint in their profession, in their communities, in their countries, in the world. And also the capabilities of being able to not only collaborate with their own peers in their own discipline, but also with other disciplines, because that's what's needed in today's world more than ever. And the second concept is impact. And what are the non-examples? The non-examples is just paying attention to passing grades, or to cover content a course is intended to cover or use some materials as a reference, a textbook, a number of readings. The focus should not be on simply making sure that we rush through content and that we complete it, or that we are more concerned about the percentages of students that pass our course, or that we solve only or expose learners to textbook kinds of problems. And not that textbook problems are not good, they're just part of the learning process. But we also want them to be able to have the experience of solving problems for which we don't know the answers, especially faculty, so that we join with them in the quest of understanding issues and applying whatever methods or tools or processes or concepts that we are acquiring in our discipline, so we learn how to problem solve together. So what are examples of impact? It's when we focus on learning results. So not just covering the content, but that learners are able to demonstrate that they have acquired some competencies, sensibilities, capabilities to be able to navigate professionally in the world. Second, that we also consider not just their disciplines, but the competencies that we recognize as competencies for the 21st century, that have to do with collaboration, with openness, with communication skills, with being more resourceful, with being not only technology literate, but also data literate. And along the same lines, to have these mindsets of being problem solvers and know how to address things with the resources that what they have. And related to what I was saying before is just leaving this footprint that they, as professionals, they're part of a larger community. They're part of a of a they're global citizens, and therefore they're contributing to solutions not only locally at their jobs, but also at at the larger scale, as the concept of global. So it's local impact, but local actions that have global implications as well, and the capabilities to collaborate with other disciplines and producing results together as teams. So in essence, we've have it since the beginning of the first version of this summit a year ago, the first two iterations. We've gone through lots of changes and challenges. You were forced, like everywhere else in the world, to confront the challenges of migrating in an emergency situation to online remote learning, emergency remote learning, really, and it becomes a challenge. So the lesson, the important thing is that if it becomes a challenge or perhaps considered a misfortune, there are lessons that we can distill from that process. And that's on us. It's on us to not just lament that we are in this situation or consider that wishful thinking that things would be would go back to normal. We are where we are. So the challenge is for us to distill those lessons, to discover what is it that we need to learn in this process. So I'm going to give you two tools basically, because in talks like this one, we don't help participants acquire new skills or anything. At the very least, we can aspire to develop a different mindsets or give different interpretation to things, the shift in perspective. So imagine we have these kaleidoscopes, and I'm going to present two ideas or two concepts that will help as a framework to understand and address the current challenges for distance learning. The first one has to do with the narrative. The narrative is, what is it that we say to ourselves and to others that explains a given situation? Narrative about ourselves as professionals, as part of a community, as part of a country. And that narrative is important because it provides either opportunities or it provides limitations in the way we see things. And let me tell you one example of that. In preparation for this year's event, I became more curious about Pakistan as a country, to understand a little bit about your history, a little bit about where is, and what are the issues that address Pakistan. And in the process, I discovered this exceptional historian, Pakistani American historian, Dr. Ayesha Halal. And through several lectures that I was able to witness from her, I was able to obtain two ideas. One is this notion of the narrative. And in her case, she provides an alternative to the narrative about Pakistan, its country, its culture, its history, its people, one that has not been very favorable, to say the least, and who is not very positive, and who sometimes dominates like the world perception of Pakistan. But if you consider that, it's basically just a narrative, what has been said, what is understood, and what is communicated. And instead, because she is a historian, and one of the things that she mentions is like history is the only discipline really that gives you a sense of continuity of what has changed, what has not changed, and history also being perceived not just as a recollection of things that happened in the past that have no impact, but rather as a tool precisely to understand and inform your present and your future. So as a result of that, and with the eyes as a historian, she provides a different alternative to having a narrative that says, in contrast to a negative narrative about Pakistani's history, its people, its culture, provide an alternative narrative that is more uplifting, and a narrative that says that Pakistan as a country of resilience and perseverance, that in spite of all these difficulties, is able to continue to move forward and reconstruct, redefine yourselves. And what better testament that than the work that you have done by launching these kinds of events, which initially was meant to be all Pakistan event in distance learning, but has become a global event. So you have placed Pakistan in the world stage. Some places like uh, like like the cinema, like the industry, have used the same kind of a structure to develop some of these stories, like the movies that some of you may recognize, like Star Wars, Spider-Man, Lion Kings, and the like, which basically says you're confronted with a challenge in your world. Everything's fine. You're doing everything as usual, like we were all teaching 2 years ago, as usual at the university. All of a sudden, we come in lockdown. We cannot meet face to face, and that creates a call for adventure, a challenge to be able to step into an unknown world of distance learning and the like. And that includes a process of stepping in the process of doing so, you will find partners, you will find challenges, and in the case of Quality Matters, I suppose, and I, I understand and hope that QM, as a provider of learning standards for online design, becomes a partner, at least in providing a map of how to navigate course design.
Okay, perfect. So let's start with our today's first keynote speaker. I'd like to give a small, brief introduction to Dr. Senior. He serves as international representative of Quality Matters in the Latin America and Caribbean region. He obtained his PhD in education psychology at the University of Illinois, a master's degree at the Rochester Institute of Technology in the US, and a bachelor's degree at the University of Puerto Rico in Miami, US. Now, Dr. Senior conceptualizes, leads, designs, and implements learning solutions to improve learning and quality assurance. So let's give him a huge round of applause and very warm welcome. Thank you so much for being with us. Sir, the mic is over to you.
I was saying that this metaphor that about the hero's journey is a good metaphor to understand where we are and help us navigate the rest of the journey that we have concerning distance learning and figuring out how to be more effective educators. And I was saying, skip to this part, because what it means by revelation is that after we've spent, as you have already, at least in the last year, but it's going to be probably a longer time and more investment of experiences, trying to figure out how to solve all the many ramifications of what it means to go online, from policy issues to technology to infrastructure to access to design to faculty development to assessment to the very, very nitty gritty specific things about what you do in classrooms and activities and resources and group projects and the dynamics of teaching and learning, to the point that eventually you get to this stage of basically you transforming yourself, acquiring new sets of skills and roles and capabilities and processes that you bring now. It sort of integrating your previous practice of what you used to know about, in this case, face to face education and how it operates, and eventually just to what it means to, in essence, like return home. So you go through this journey, you immerse yourself in a different world of distance learning and what it means and all the ramifications. And hopefully then returning home means that even if when we come back fully face to face in a online in a university environment or whatever wherever the level of education that you're engaged in, you will not be the same. Things will never be the same. Things will never be what they used to be, because you will have acquired as a learner, as a faculty, as an administrator, a different set of rules, capabilities, sensibilities, and ambitions as well, of that will never will change forever and will alter what you used to do in your real world, and that will be fine until we run again into the next change of story or shift in environment where and it's all over again, and we start all over again and discovering, going through this journey. So I have an invitation out of the two ideas that I suggested as using it as filters, as mindsets. One is this notion of narrative, choosing a different kind of a narrative that really propels you to be more proactive, being informed by the past but not limited by the past, and also this notion that it is a journey and you have to step in, you have to accept the challenge and go through all the processes that involve figuring out what this new territory, unknown territory, is. So my invitation to you for the rest of this event is to continue to embrace this journey, to continue to learn and ask questions. To as I was saying already before, that it is being informed by history, history not just in terms of the national history, but in terms of what has been done before in the academic setting and how that changes. Paying attention to
Dr.
changes.
Fernando,
Yes, let me finish.
Dr.
Let me
Fernando.
finish. Please don't interrupt me. Let me finish. Reinterpret and reimagine their current reality. And in essence, just to summarize